Hi everyone, welcome to the DevOps Ukraine today, and I will talk about building a full-stack serverless applications with AWS Amplify. As ordinary, let me start with a very small introduction of myself. My name is Alexander Barmin, and I'm a chief software engineer at EPAM Systems. Today I'm broadcasting from the United Kingdom, London. And as ordinary, let's start with an agenda. First of all, I'd like to make a very small introduction and explanation what is AWS Amplify. Next, we will take a look into its main capabilities and first of all, into Amplify CLI. Well, next we will go through possible options. What can we add to our application, and of course we'll take a look into the administrative interface, which is provided out of the box really for free by Amplify. There will be a small coding session, like I will show some code examples, but still they might be quite interesting, and that's all. So let's do not waste the time. Let's get started and go ahead as soon as possible. Well, in order to explain what is AWS Amplify, I'd like to focus on its main capabilities. First of all, AWS Amplify is a CLI and toolchain for developers, which allows to generate skeleton of the application and add features to it. So if you ever been involved, if you ever had an opportunity to build application with using cloud technologies, you may be familiar that it is quite complicated thing to build and join all the pieces together. That's why Amplify helps here a lot. Next piece is that Amplify contains many libraries, built-in components for modern frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, and of course for pure JavaScript components as well. Oops. So I'm sorry. A moment, please. Sorry. My screen is not sharing now. Oops. But just bear with me. So I think I will fix it shortly. Just a moment. Unfortunately, my PowerPoint decided to break up. Yep. Okay. So it is here. Yep. Okay. So just colleagues, just to confirm that you see what I'm broadcasting. Okay. Yeah. Great. So let's move on. So as you see, Amplify is a quite comprehensive thing which helps a lot with building applications for clouds. So let's take a look and take a few steps back and check how was it possible to build applications without Amplify. Because, well, Amplify and any other cloud technologies are quite modern things. And before that, in order to build a full stack application, it was necessary to have backend and frontend separately. And of course, having both the components, you can store all of them in separate repositories, backend in one repository, frontend in a second repository, somewhere like code commit, GitHub, GitLab, and so on. As soon as you're ready with your source code, what you need to do is just to build artifacts, which next will be deployed to your binary storage like Artifactory or maybe just S3. And in order to do it, you need to have tools like code build, Jenkins, GitLab CI, and so on. As soon as you're ready, your artifacts are built, and next it should be deployed to somewhere. And here there are many other tools which helps doing it, like AWS Code Deploy. What they do, they just take your artifacts and deploy to a proper location, like to Elastic Container container service or S3 bucket as a source destination. Well, that's quite ordinary, not enough, because majority of applications do not consist of just backend and frontend. They also require a lot of supplementary services like database, like API, and so on. And speaking about clouds and AWS especially, in order to build all these services and configure it, you need to have a CloudFormation template. You take this template to CloudFormation and it will configure all the things for you, like DynamoDB, IAM roles, gateway, and so on. But the main problem here is that your backend, frontend, and infrastructure are managed separately. So if you're making a quite complicated change, what you need to do, you need to make change in all these three components. Well, you could take a step forward and use AWS SAM, serverless application model, which allows you to significantly simplify your life. In this case, instead of writing a CloudFormation template, what you need to do is to maintain SAM template. It is much more complicated solution. And for example, if you need to deploy AWS Lambda function using ordinary CloudFormation template, you need to write of course, you need to write a function, you need to configure API gateway, you need to upload your function to somewhere, and so on. Speaking about SAM, what you need to do is just to do one single thing. Say, this is function, this is source code, and SAM will do all for you. Significantly simplifies the workflow. Well, it also helps you to build backend, but frontend in this case should be built separately. Okay, again, code build will help you, and SAM template next will be converted to the CloudFormation template, and all other steps are really the same. CloudFormation template will be transferred to CloudFormation. Based on it, all the necessary infrastructure will be spinned up, and all working, all works. However, here you see that backend and frontend are still separated. However, your infrastructure is together with your backend. Let's try to solve this problem one more time in a bit different way. What if we try to start not with the backend, but with frontend? And in this case, we can spin up our and bootstrap our development of our frontend application, like create an application using Angular CLI, and next add Amplify capabilities into it. In this case, you will be able to manage all the components of your application in one single place. So adding Amplify to your local development environment will allow you to have Amplify config and SAM template in one single place. And what's more important, as soon as you add capabilities to your application like DynamoDB and so on, it will be immediately added into your application configuration, first of all, and secondly, it will be immediately created in the cloud. That's great. And next, of course, the workflow is the same. Based on created components, Amplify will build backend, frontend, deploy CloudFormation template, and so on. So what we have here? Here we have a quite interesting approach when all the components of your application in one single place. There is no need to maintain them separately. That's really awesome. So as I said, Amplify is a CLI, first of all, which contains a lot of useful commands for building application from scratch and adding components into it. Next, Amplify is a JavaScript library as a set of UI components which really simplifies development by providing prepared workflows and prepared components for integration with cloud services. Like if you'd like to have a component which uploads file to S3, you can just take it. You do not need to write it on your own, right? All the authentication workflow, right? All retry, serialization and deserialization and other things. So good stuff. The same components are available for web applications, but also for mobile, like iOS, Android, React Native, Ionic, and Flutter. And what else? Well, as I said, it is CLI, and it allows not only configure your application, but also build, deploy, test it locally, and so on. So really awesome thing. So what services are available right now using AWS Amplify? What could be configured right out of the box? Majority of our application are dealing with data. That's why Amplify suggest us using DynamoDB and configure AppSync and data store components for us. So as soon as we decide to deal with this particular piece of data, Amplify will configure AppSync for us, and also it will configure DynamoDB tables for us. So all the things are in one single place. Good enough. Good enough, I suppose. What else? Well, in order to connect our backend and frontend, as ordinary, it's necessary to have a kind of API. So here out of the box are available two kinds, GraphQL and REST-based. Honestly, GraphQL is a bit preferable option. It works not faster, but it's much easier to deal with it using Amplify. Well, of course, predefined and preconfigured API works gracefully. However, you can always customize it using a Lambda and serverless functions. That's really awesome. Many applications are dealing not only with data which is stored in databases, but also with binary or blob data. S3 is a good option for storing this kind of data. So Amplify allows you to configure it out of the box. Well, what else? Honestly, many other services are available from out of the box using CLI can be configured gracefully just within few lines of code. Cognito, geolocation with Amazon Location Service, analytics using Pinpoint and Amazon Kinesis, AI-powered chatbots are also available out of the box. You can use machine learning, pops up notification for mobile devices, and also even augmented and virtual reality. That's great. Okay, so what do you need in order to start? Of course, you need to first initialize a new project using Amplify init. Next, of course, you need to add a new capability using Amplify add. If you'd like to run something locally, Amplify mock is all what you need. As soon as you're ready with your changes locally, you can push them to the cloud using Amplify push and update if there are some changes made by another developer in a separate branch, for example, or in upstream branch in GitHub or in Git. So, communication with backend services are also quite complicated. And speaking about provided components, they significantly simplify it. Just because, for example, speaking about the web application, there is no need to write code which will communicate with backend service. What you need to do is just import your package, import, like add it into packages.json file, import into your application code, and just use. This component will do a lot for you under the hood, like configure URLs, configure authentications, and all the necessary key, deal with data serialization, deserialization, retry policies, and so on. So high-level clients are also a strong point of AWS Amplify. And there are many other things which simplifies development. Like there is not always need to write code on your own. You could, for example, do data modeling using administrative interface. Why not? Okay, so as I said, there will be a quite small coding session, but in order not to fall behind the schedule, I will show a few pieces of code for you. So this is the application I'm going to write. Important moment that, of course, application like this consists of backend, frontend, and like frontend ordinary consists of user interface and business logic. I will not show user interface which I built. I will focus on the business logic I written. That's why all the pieces of code you will see on the slides is the single pieces of code I written. All other stuff were generated by Amplify for me or was just markup in order to display pictures and so on. Majority of us, when start new projects, use technologies they are familiar with. I will use Amplify and Angular. So In order to start, what I need to have? Of course, first of all, I need to have an architecture of my application at least in mind. What will I build? I will build a full stack application, and I will start with the front-end part. And in order to this front-end part to communicate with backend, I need to have an API. I will use GraphQL because it is available out of the box, and it is quite comprehensive because of a few more features I'd like to demonstrate further. So my API is required in order to communicate with backend services, like a service which provides me a list of pictures, list of likes, comments, and so on. And of course, every service should have a backend storage, like either S3 or DynamoDB for storing data. So let's get started and go ahead. As it says, as I said, I will build my applications with Angular. So first of all, I need to have an Angular CLI. If you do not have it, you can always install it and next generate an application using ng init command. It is an important point that an Amplify cannot be included into the empty folder. It should be aware what exact application, what exact front-end technology are you using. So if you have created an application with Angular CLI, Amplify will understand that this application is built on the top of Angular and will add special Angular specific components written like in TypeScript and components which have special like metadata for Angular. If your application is built with React, Amplify will also get this information from your package.json file and add components specific to React. If you are dealing with a mobile application written, for example, for iOS, again, really the same, and Amplify will get this information from your source folder. So first of all, you need to spin up your single page application or web application. So next step is install Amplify CLI and execute Amplify init. What you will be asked here? You will be asked to provide information, what's the name of your application, in which region it should be deployed, and so on. Just a few simple questions. Right after it, I'd like to start adding new capabilities into my application. And first, and a very boring capability which almost every application has is authentication. In order to have it in my application, I need to execute one single command, amplify add auth. What next? I will be asked how to name my Cognito, what's the name of my Cognito pool, and what exact provider I'd like to use. For example, I can configure and use OAuth provider out of the box, or I can just store logins and passwords somewhere in Cognito directly and do not provide my users with capability to authenticate via GitHub, for example, Facebook, and so on. This is on the right hand side, you see what I will get. So as you may see, it is a quite ordinary form which allows me to enter username and password. But what else? It also provides me with capability to register, to reset my password. If I enable, I could have, for example, two-step authentication right out of the box, because the one single piece of code I written here is this. I just wrapped my application with Amplify Authenticator component, which is specific to Angular, and as a result, I got this. So it is magic on the one hand, because I just added a component and Amplify did everything for me. I can just use it right out of the box. Okay, so what's next? As I said, next step is to build API for my application. And first of all, what I need to do is to add this capability to my application. Amplify add API allows me to have it. Amplify will ask me what I'd like to use, REST API of GraphQL. And next, it will configure, for example, AppSync in case if I'd like to use GraphQL, and API gateway if I'd like to use simple REST API. Next step is, of course, describe my data model and generate classes, which allows me to connect my front-end application with the back-end part. In order to do it, I need to execute Amplify code gen model and, of course, a ordinary push. But what is the input for Amplify code gen model? As you know, in order to deal with GraphQL, what you need to have is GraphQL schema. This is the file which is used further for building your API and for building your data model, because Amplify adds additional annotations on the top of GraphQL schema. For example, if you use @model annotation, these classes, these types will be used as top-level entities in your generated APIs, and also they will be stored in separate tables in DynamoDB. Of course, if you need to have additional authentication before accessing this data, you can use @auth annotation. So what's next? More likely your data has connections like entity A is connected with entity B. You can describe it using @connection and @key annotation on the top of your GraphQL schema. So what does it mean? What exactly will be done? It will definitely affect code which is generated, and next it will create indexes in your database. What else is available right out of the box? If you'd like to have custom resolvers for your fields in your backend, you can use add function or HTTP in order to configure Lambda function, which will be used, or HTTP resolver. Many other features are also available out of the box, like predictions to use machine learning, search for using Amazon OpenSearch, and versionet if you'd like to have multiple versions of your application. So what is generated based on GraphQL.schema? Well, that's cool. DTO classes, first of all, are generated based on schema. And what's more important is that as soon as you change your GraphQL schema, your DTO classes will be updated. But secondly, you will also have an API service. This is a service which allows you to transparently connect your front-end application with the backend. And also, it will have all the necessary methods based on your schema. Not only CRUD methods, but also methods to get data from relations, not only like list accounts, list post and comment, but also list posts by a particular account. And of course, as soon as you change your schema, your API client will be kept in sync. Well, this is quite useful feature of Amplify, but that's not all which is available out of the box. Well, if you're dealing with users which do not have stable internet connection, you could introduce a data store feature in your application which allow your user to have offline mode. This offline mode is provided by data store component. On the one hand, this data store component provides you with a way to store some data on the client side and sync it regularly or periodically as soon as internet connection is off. On the other hand, it also provides you with a bit more comprehensive API for retrieving data, like retrieving posts by their fields, but not only by ID. So take a look into it. Okay, so what else is available? So of course, data store, you're dealing with your application, you need to store files, and here S3 is the best option. So what you have here, you have a storage component. This storage component allow you to send data to S3, upload them very transparently, and get assigned URL back. Well, running code locally before pushing is a good practice. Here, Amplify allows you to do it by mocking different components like S3 storage, functions, and AppSync API gateways. And of course, administrative user interface. Well, I don't want to spend many time talking about it, but it is an alternative for getting external users with access to your AWS Management Console. It allows other users without access to your AWS console to access content of your application. Also, it allows you to model data without writing the code, managing the content, managing user which are registered in your application, and slightly deal with Amplify configurations. There are many benefits, but also there are some drawbacks. Of course, in order to use Amplify, you need to learn it. Also, as soon as new capabilities are introduced in it, this CLI and Amplify API are going to be changed. So you have to stay up to date almost all the time. Another important drawback is that as soon as you make almost any change locally, it almost immediately affect your cloud deployment. That's why you need to be super sure in what you're doing. And next important thing which you have to pay for is that all the components are in one single place. That's why Amplify mix responsibilities of backend, frontend, and infrastructure. And of course, as soon as you add Amplify into your application, it will be extremely hard to get rid of it further. Not all the features are also configurable. Amplify is not the one single option. You can take a look into the Google Firebase, MongoDB Stitch, and Azure Functions. Azure mobile apps, they provide the same capabilities, but on different platforms. So that's all. Thank you very much. Amplify, I suppose, is a good starting point for bootstrapping your application. Of course, it provides many good capabilities right out of the box, but also before building the application, you need to consider all the drawbacks and compare pros and cons. And of course, keep limitation in mind. All the code examples are available on my GitHub. If you'd like to know more about Amplify and AWS Sam, you can take a look into this amazing talk and follow me on Twitter, GitHub, and on email. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander, for your amazing talk. We were impressed. Hope our participants also. And I suggest to continue the discussion at the discussion table with our participants. So I invite you there and have a nice day.
You too. Thank you very much for having me today.